Hi everyone! So today we're going to be doing a sketch of cherries, and I wanted to do something kind of more realistic, and we are going to be using Ingress paper. So this is the kind of paper that has this line texture to it. It's quite thin, as you can see, and I am going to be using a dark red kind of burgundy color. I will show you the one that I'm using. So this is the paper that I'm going to be using, and let's begin. So the first thing that we're going to do is we will need to sketch our cherries. I have my reference photo here, and I'm going to use charcoal. You can use a charcoal pencil, or you can use willow charcoal just to do the sketch. So I have a stick of willow charcoal here. I actually like this more because it's very soft and you can erase the charcoal very easily, and pastel layers very nicely over the top. So I look at my cherries, so I need to think where I want them positioned. I'm going to measure my cherries, how they relate the width of the cherries to the height of the stems. So I see that my cherries are about as wide as they are tall, and I also need to make sure that I have room for that leaf here. So this basically will move a bit here. So you can see you can erase the charcoal even with your finger only. And I'm looking at my cherries. I see that this cherry is turned towards us and this one is kind of turned to the side. And here, pay attention, we need to keep this gap in between the cherries. They don't have to come together. So one of the worst things in compositionally that you can do excuse me, that you can do in a drawing or a painting is to actually place the objects that they will touch each other. So we are leaving the gap here on purpose. So I'm looking at my cherries, trying to get those proportions. So this is one, and this one is turned on the side. Almost to the side. So now I see that the center of the cherry is somewhere here, and we can imagine a line going through the cherry. So this one, it actually goes a bit like this. So we will show that it's not straight, that it's standing a bit to the side. Excuse me for my voice, I've been down with a cold. Had to actually do the test for the virus recently because was kind of a bit afraid that I had caught it. So these are the cherries, and this one is a bit too high. And here we've got the stalk going up. So I'm gonna see that it roughly, yeah, it's too high. So that roughly it gets around here. And this one, it goes a bit, it's not straight, it's a bit bent. So this is going to be my stalk. And here I really like this leaf. And again, I don't want it to touch my cherry here. So in the photo, it actually touches the cherry, but I will move it just a bit higher up so that it doesn't touch the cherry. So now what's left to do is we need to sketch in those curves in our cherries. And look at how our shadows are actually formed here. I don't like this side of the cherry. Then we can use also a kneaded eraser to get rid of all the extra charcoal we don't need. And only now I will start to actually make my cherry rounder. If you've noticed, I'm using very choppy lines. This is so that I can actually see the shape of the cherry better. Okay. And only now I'm curving the cherry so that I know that it's not blocky. It's not a square thing. Okay. And let's pay attention also, we have the light kind of coming from the top. We can already mark the highlights where they will be approximately. And also here we'll have to pay attention. And the same as we have the cherries that have a slightly warped round shape, the highlights are going to be distributed this way on the cherries. So here there is the reflected light from the table, as it's white, and we have the shadow that is under the cherry, so we can show that shadow here, but we will do that in color. So for now, this is it. We can clean up our drawing a bit with the kneaded eraser, and we can start adding some color. So I'm going to slightly tap my cherries with the kneaded eraser. As I said, we are going to clean it up a bit, so that when we layer the color, and also those smudges that we left, we won't have too much of charcoal, but we will have just enough of it to see the drawing. And then after we add the color also, we can clean it up even more, the drawing. So if you want to leave the background, you can always get rid of the charcoal very easily. Okay, so now we can start with the color. We will need cherry colors mostly, and different shades of red, and we will go also into purples. So we have kind of a cool light happening here and a warm shadow. So the first thing I will start is with the reds. I have my reds here, and I have another paper that's the same as the paper that I'm using to draw, and we will test out our colors over here. So I'm going to go with my medium value first. So I'm going to test it on the paper, and I see that I really like this color for my cherries, and I will layer it in the areas where there is light and where there's the reflected shadow, reflected color, light, sorry, reflected shadow. So mostly over all of my cherry, I will start layering this color, not going into the highlights though. So I'm using my pastel on the side. I'm going to start adding the color. So here we will have another highlight, but it's going to be darker than this main highlight, so we can go over it as well. And the same thing I'm doing for this cherry here. So to make our cherries look more interesting, we will have to use multiple different colors. So I'm going to use another red that is a bit brighter to add it into some places, especially where the light hits our cherry. So this way we will give more color, more variety, more color variety to the cherries. I'm not going into the shadow zone here. You can see I'm only adding it where there's light, right? Let's use another red that is darker even. This is very similar. Let's see. Getting a really dark red sometimes is very difficult. I think this is the same as well. Let's go into I think I will have to go into these it's a bit too bland, this color. I don't like it. I wanted to go a bit into some browner reds. So let's see. So for example, this color, I like it as a color, but for cherries it's not going to work because it's going to give them appearance of very old fruit. Okay, so I think I have something dark maybe here, something from cooler reds. Nope. Okay, so let's go then let's go with something lighter. So this color is going to look even darker. So I'm going to add a bit more lighter color here on my cherry. If you don't have something very dark, you can add something light, like a color that is light, that is going to instantly make the color that you want it to seem darker. And we can also add a bit of dark blues. So I'm gonna add some dark blues into the shadow areas before we start adding any lights onto our cherries. So here I'm going to use a bit of that dark color because I see that there's behind the stem there is quite a dark dip into the cherry itself inside. So adding this dark blue also on this side. And here we have both cherries standing next to each other. That's why here we have this darker reflection and shadow forming on this side. And at the bottom here we will have it darker also, as the place where the object touches the surface is going to have the shape shadow forming, the occlusion shadow. So I'm going to clean my hands now. I'm using wet wipes. It's like the best thing I ever found to clean pastel. Making sure that it's dry before you actually touch either the pastel or the paper. So I'm going to actually dry off my hands. And now we can start blending. So I don't want it to lose texture altogether. I'm very gently blending the colors together. Trying not to drag the darkest colors into the brighter ones so they don't mix too much. So here I'm just tapping with my fingers so that I don't mix the colors, the ones that I don't want to mix. For example, this dark blue. I'm going to add a bit more color here. And mix the two together. So this is only the first layer that we have for our cherries. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing for our other cherry. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to clean up, because I want to leave the paper as the background color. And I'm going to clean up the pastel that went, and also the charcoal that's left out of the edge. Because with pastel it is how it is. We have the dust that's going to smudge the paper anyway. Okay, so this is our first layer. And we will start by adding more colors to our cherries. So I will use also some violets. Let's see, this one is going to be quite nice in the shadow areas. So we have more color in the shadow areas. Adding my dark blues. This is a darker, even darker blue. And adding that red as well. So this is going to give us that cherry color. So by mixing these colors together, we get the more interesting color, and our cherry is going to look more realistic. Here I created mud. As you see, I mixed in this light color with the darker ones, and it instantly creates mud, so you have to be careful about mixing colors that are very, very different in value. Okay, so now I'm going to go over the areas with this lighter red, over the areas that have more light on them. So I see that here under this highlight there is a lighter area, and over here. Okay, so I'm going to start adding this lighter color, as I said, to the places where I see where there is the gradual turn of our shape into the highlights. Okay, and here I will mix this violet more with my red so that our cherry doesn't look too violet. So it's nice that in places it's going to show through, but not everywhere. For now we'll leave it like this. Cleaning my finger all the time when I'm changing between tones. Okay, so again, I'm going to clean my hands. And we can start working on the second layer. So now that we have our cherry with the darker parts mostly developed, I'm going to start adding the shadows to it. I'm using my dark blue. This is a very dark blue. It's a Sennelier. I really love this color, and actually broke the pastel, and it was horrible. So I'm adding this dark blue at the bottom here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this color and create a shadow out of it. So we see that there is a shadow, and with my kneaded eraser, I'm going to get the contour back. So here between the shadow and the cherry, there's this area that the cherry doesn't touch the table. And the same thing we're going to do with this cherry here. So the darkest place in any object that we're drawing is the place where it touches the surface of where it's standing on. Same thing here, we're adding that shadow. And I have my dog that doesn't allow me to work today. So this is our darkest spot. There we will also be able to add a bit of black later, just so that we show that area. So this is actually not black, this is black. So this is the part, it's actually kind of a blue-black here, which is going to be the darkest area, right at the part where the cherry touches the surface of the table. And I'm going to add another more neutral color that's close to the color of the paper to actually show that this shadow disappears. Let's see, this is too bright. Okay, we can add this warmer color into our shadow here at the bottom. And then gently blend it into the color of the paper so that we can show that our cherries are also kind of impacting the surface that they're standing on. So we're giving the warmth from the cherries onto our surface. And I'm going to use something neutral to tone it down so it's not as red. Otherwise it's going to look too warm. So this is kind of a neutral umber color. And this is going to make our shadows look more realistic. And again, going back in with my dark blue just to give that shadow the darkness again, if it got away from us. Okay. Now I'm looking at my cherry and I'm going to use this darker blue to give it shape. So I'm going to add this darker blue. This is not the very dark blue, but this is kind of a grayish blue where the shape curves. Like so. And here, again, cleaning up the areas where I don't want pastel to be. Very easy to fix. And here we need to keep that gap between the cherry and its shadow. The same goes here. Need to maintain that contour sharp. Okay, and now I'm going to go in with my darkest blue and add those occlusive shadows to the area where the cherries reflect in each other, and it's quite dark there. So here, pay attention. It doesn't go on the all the way to the side. Here, there's going to be there's going to be light, a highlight catching. Okay. And also a bit darker on this side here. So if you're having trouble blending it with your fingers, you can use a paper stump or a color shaper. It's also going to work nicely if you're afraid that you're gonna blend the color out of the shape of your object. So if it's quite small, then you can use a color shaper. Okay, and here. Like so. Now I'm going to go in with my reds, just to give it a bit of texture to my cherry. Just a bit, just a touch up. And also here, there's going to be a lighter spot. Okay. All we have to do now is we can make sure that our edges are really crisp. Okay, and make sure that where there's shadow, we have our darks put in. I'm going to use the color shaper here because it's quite small, this area. And also here. You can also do this thing with pencils, but they won't layer as well as pastel does, especially this extra soft pastel does on paper that's not abrasive. And here I have this darker line going and creating the shape. Okay. We can go into the stem now, and actually want to fix a bit the area here between the cherries. And now we can move on to our stem and leaf. So for the leaf and for the stem, we will need some warm greens and some yellow. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start with a warm green, quite a light color. It's going to be the main color of my stem. And I'm going to add it over here, a bit into this part where there is the connection between the cherries, and a bit on the leaf as well. As I see it, it's quite translucent, this leaf. I'm gonna go into the more yellow greens, and where I see that here on this side, so as the light is coming from the top, it's going to be lighter. You can also use a pencil for this, like so. Also on the leaf, I see that where it's translucent, it kind of shines with a bit of this light, a bit of this yellow-green. Here it catches light as well. And I'm gonna go into some darker greens. Let's see how this is going to look. It's not dark enough. I have a little shard here. Okay, this is quite good. So we're gonna mix it in together. Where the shadow area is, I'm going to add it. Just make sure that you don't make the line too thick. So we need to make sure that our stems remain dark. And here where the leaf connects, it also has darker color. Okay. And now we need something even more brown. This is going to give the dimension to our stem. And make it look more realistic. So I'm looking for a darker color. So this is a greenish brown to add that extra dimension to our cherries, so they have, to the stems of our cherries, so they have the 3D appearance. So I found a little shard of a darker green color, but it's very close to the one I have. But the more different colors you're using, the more variety you will have when they mix. It's going to look more interesting. I'm trying to find a green color that is kind of a grass green, a very juicy green. So that our leaf doesn't look like it's dried up. Okay, so this is better. Let's see. Trying to find the right color. Okay. And here we have quite a dark part. I'm gonna use my dark blue to add those shadows, and then go over it with a brown. the one we used for the shadows here. And this is where our color shaper is going to come in handy. We can blend these colors to make our stem look like it's not textured, but it's quite smooth. So this is very difficult to do with the hand, with the fingers, because you need really tiny fingers to do this. So I'm kind of blending the colors, and then we will define everything more. Here in the leaf, obviously, we can use our finger. I'm trying to blend it in the direction of how the leaf grows, so from the middle, from the central line, towards outside. And here I actually want to add even my dark blue, because I want to show that shadow. I don't manage to find my dark greens, the ones that I actually needed for this. And here we're gonna use the dark blues that we have in the cherry itself also, to give that dimension. Okay, cleaning my hands once again. Gonna go over this edge here so that my cherry is defined. Just blending this edge, and my cherry to have sharp edges. In the back, we can actually smudge the edges a bit so that where the edges are sharper, that is closer to us, the cherry is going to look more defined, and in the back it's going to look more blurry, because we're going to create this appearance of depth in our drawing. So the closer to us, the more defined our cherry is. The further away, the less defined. Here in the back, where there's too much color, too much pigment, I'm going to lift it out. I don't want to smudge it too much into the background, but I'm making my edges a bit blurry here. So here I see that I lost a bit of my shadows. I'm going to add a bit those shadows back where there's this depth in my cherry, and also over here we have that darker area as the form curves. And the same thing goes here. Now with the lights, with the reflections of the light in our cherry, we're going to be defining the shape better. So tapping in where I don't want too much texture, I'm just tapping it slightly, just to take away that texture away just a bit, so our cherry doesn't look too textured. So it's quite kind of glossy and smooth, so I need to try and keep it that way. Now let's move on to our highlights. Okay, so for the highlights, what are we going to be using? I want to use some violets and blues. So this is one of the lights that I will be using. It's not white, it's very light purple color. This is another color that is very good. It's like a bluish violet that we will be using for the reflected light. And I need to make sure that I have a darker and a lighter color. So these are going to be my reflected light colors. And let's start. So I see that here the reflected light goes according to the shape of my cherry, and it becomes slightly lighter as it gets higher up. Here we still have the dark occlusive shadow happening. Not losing the place where the cherry actually touches in the shadow. I'm gonna slightly blend this violet in. Again, I'm looking at the shape of the cherry, and I'm looking at those highlights, how they shape. Okay. And I'm going to add this highlight also on this side. It's not as bright as the other one, but it's there, and we will mix it together with our lightest highlight. And over here, just a bit of light reflects here on the edge. So that's gonna help us create that shape. And here on the back, there is quite a lot of light reflecting off of our cherry. So we will start with this darker color reflecting, and then we will gradually build it up to lighter color. Okay, the same thing goes here. And it gets darker towards the shadow here. Pay attention that there's quite a sharp corner happening here where the light reflects. It's because of the shape of the cherry. Okay. And also on this side, it's going to catch this slightly darker color. We're blending only from the inside. Blend it together with this red. Okay. Next, we're gonna go into our lights, and I think I actually will use also something even brighter like this, so we give it more color. So the first layer I'm gonna do with my highlight is this bright violet. So I'm adding it where I see my brightest highlights. Even a bit we can add it here, and then we blend it in with our reflected light. Also here, so here we're careful to create that shape. We need to make sure that we're looking at how the light is distributed on the surface of our cherry. Okay, and the same thing goes here. So the top of our cherry catches the light. That's what's gonna work together with our shadow and show us the shape of the cherry itself. And now over it, I'm gonna go with this lighter, warmer violet. And I see that here it also catches quite a lot of light. Now we can start blending it before we add more highlights and more shadows. Okay, now we can define these highlights sharper. And then we will go back into the shadows, and where we lost them, we're gonna bring them back. Okay, and the same thing goes here. We have this quite a defined shape, so it's quite a sharp shape of a highlight. Okay, and also on top here. So you can see how after we add the light, you can see how instantly our cherries start to take shape. Okay. I'm gonna add a bit of this brighter violet here also, just to give another color kick to our cherries. Okay, let's go back to our dark blues and restore those shadows if we lost them. Here it has quite a strong shape shadow. Then over the top we can still go with our reds also. And over here, create that darker area. The same way as here. Now we're gonna go over with our reds and make it more like a cherry color. Make sure you have clean fingers. See what happens if you use your fingers when they're dirty. Be careful not to mix the light and the dark together. Okay, and I'm gonna go in with my reds over the blues, just so that the cherry doesn't look too blue. And now again with the lights back in, sharpening, defining. Getting that shape right is also going to help us show the shape of the cherry. I'm going to use my color shaper to blend these highlights better. And now for the final touch, I'm going to use white to add that most important highlight, the brightest appearance. To make our cherries really glow, we can smudge it just a bit. Adding a bit more darkness. here on the back, I'm gonna smudge this highlight and get my stem back in there. So adding a bit more shadow to our stem, also onto the leaf, more shadow. Can indicate a bit those veins on the leaf, but don't get carried away too much. We can show that edge in some places, the darker blue, just to bring that leaf a bit closer to us. And also on this side as well. And I would even add a bit of the brown into my leaf just to give the appearance of the cherry reflecting in the color of the leaf as well. And adding a bit of green into the reflection here on the cherry. And now we have to work only on the top here, indicating that place where the cherry actually kind of grows together. I want to add just a bit of light into my leaf here, so to show its translucency in between these veins. Making it slightly more juicier, and we layer over the top. Still we show the color. And I'm actually going to use a charcoal pencil here to make sure that my shadow is nice and dark here at the bottom where it touches. And basically that's it. All that's left now is to clean up our drawing, remove the color where we don't need it, and our little cherry sketch is all done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I really hope to see you in the next ones very soon. Thanks. Bye.